Welcome to a special live edition of At Issue here on WTVP. We thank you so much for joining us. My name is H. Wayne Wilson. I'll introduce the two guests in just a moment, but I want to remind you that this is your program. You have a chance to call, tweet, text, email. We have a variety of methods of communicating with us. You'll see those on the screen momentarily. And you'll be able to ask questions of the mayor of the city of Peoria and the city manager of the city of Peoria. Let me introduce them to you. City Manager Patrick Urich, about 5 months on the job?
About 5 months on the job, H. Thank you for having me.
Patrick comes from Peoria County, where he had a successful 10-year tenure and decided to jump into a more volatile fishbowl, let me say it that way. The mayor of Peoria in the middle of his second term is Jim Ardis. Jim, thank you for being on the show again.
Thanks, H. Good to be here.
Before we get started with your phone calls and tweets and messages of that kind, any topic that you'd like to talk to the mayor and city manager about, that would be perfectly fine. But let me just take a moment to say that our thoughts are with your daughter, Domini.
Thank you.
Your family, you, we wish the best for her. Domini is in the hospital right now and is, we pray, on the road to recovery.
Thank you very much.
While we wait for the questions, and that could be any kind of topic, I think a lot of people want to hear about the hotel. Patrick, a letter that you wrote, personally delivered to Gary Matthews, who is the person who is behind the renovation of the Pure Marquette and the new Courtyard Marriott, hand-delivered a message saying, on August 31st, we're done. Why did you decide to send that letter at that point in time?
Well, over the last several months, we had been working closely with Mr. Matthews and his team, but we had several concerns over the progress on the financing of the hotel and some of the issues, and not being able to move the project to a conclusion in a timely manner. And we know that we're going to be in a very difficult budget process here coming up very soon as we turn the corner on that here in the fall. And so we felt that it was time for us to basically send him a message that we felt it was time to take this action, go to the council, and ask for the termination of the agreement. And after that, we finally started to see through a flurry of correspondence back and forth, some additional correspondence and some additional movement that we were able to see over the last 2 weeks since we sent that letter.
So the letter was a stimulus, so to say? I know that's a bad word to use, I suppose, but it stimulated some more activity that you felt was necessary in order to move the project forward?
We did. We needed to see progress, and we needed to see some movement towards, there were 13 conditions that needed to be met prior to closing on the hotel project. And we felt that there was progress made on many of them, but there were several of the key critical components, one of those being financing, that we still needed to work on.
And so after a 2.25-hour executive session called because of imminent litigation, the council came out of that meeting Tuesday night, about 10:15, 10:30, and took a real quick vote. A 2-week extension, and then is that it?
Before I answer your question, H, I think it's important for everybody to hear in terms of this whole project. There's been a lot of discussion that why all of a sudden was the council going to terminate this agreement after all this time. Nothing has really changed dramatically. The only new part of this whole puzzle that's different is a new city manager. And there's a lot of people out there, frankly, that have said publicly and privately that our new city manager's goal was to go in there and deep six this project. And it's absolutely wasn't and still is not the case. I can tell you that nobody has worked harder or put in as many hours to try to get us to a point where we can move this forward than the city manager. That was clearly evidenced in the past couple weeks since that termination, or after that termination letter went out and we got some information. So I think that's important for everybody to know. That's not the case. But the council did take a quick vote after a lot of discussion with our attorneys on the potential for litigation and what our options could be. And we did come out and say, as the manager said, when that letter was delivered, at least in my opinion, was not sent as something to light a fire under the developer's feet. If that was the case, we probably would have done it a year ago. We really felt like we were at a point where that project wasn't gonna, we just weren't gonna be able to get it moving. And we did see significant movement after that happened. And I think the council, the majority of the council, not the entire council, has a very strong comfort level that we can get this thing, and mostly the financing terms settled, both of us in agreement on it, and still get this project closed this year. The developer showed a lot of movement in that regard in the last 2 weeks, so we have a high comfort level that we can do that.
Now, the reason for sending the letter was not just that they hadn't met some of the 13 stipulations, but this is 8 months after the deadline, the extended deadline.
That's correct. The redevelopment agreement, when it was passed by the council in May of 2010, gave the developer until December 31st to meet all of those conditions so that we could move to closing on the project. And now here we are 9 months later, and we're still working through that. So that, I think, is one of the points that we felt and probably still feel is a main factor in saying that if we're not able to resolve this, we would have the ability to terminate the agreement because of that. But there's also, I think, after we sent the letter and after we received correspondence back and forth and had the chance to talk to the redeveloper, it became clear that the number of issues that we have shrunk considerably from where, even when I arrived 5 months ago. And so we're really trying to iron out those issues and see if we can't come together. I think there's a sense of urgency on both parts to try and resolve this matter over the next 2 weeks so that we can come back to the council with a plan for how we can make that happen.
This might be an after-the-fact question, but why wasn't a headquarters hotel considered? And I know there was discussion about the south parking lot, but it just seemed like a hotel and civic center expansion should have been pretty close in timing. And we seem to lag with regard to that. I mean,
good question, H. I was not the mayor then; I was a city council member.
Yes, that's correct.
When the addition was put on, and there was, if you go back and read the minutes, or for those of us who were part of the discussion would remember, there was significant discussion on our part talking about the need for the hotel. Do we need to have a hotel too, or I mean, this is a huge expansion that we're putting on. Do we need a hotel? And the consistent answer that we heard in reply is that our existing rooms will be able to accommodate this until sometime in the future when we need more capacity. And the consultants that were hired by the Civic Center at the time seemed to validate that response. And
the need for rooms came sooner than you thought.
Sooner than they thought, correct.
Okay. You was generic, not you as mayor.
You as in, it wasn't you as in city council, it was you as in Civic Center Authority.
Understood. We have questions coming in. We'll get to that question in just a moment, but a reminder that we have up to a full hour with the mayor and the city manager of Peoria. The first half hour is on Channel 47 WTVP. At the half hour mark, we will continue with another program on WTVP, but we will continue our conversation on the internet at WTVP.org. So we have a full hour with Patrick Urich and Mayor Jim Martis. Let's switch gears and talk about the pad. And for those of you who don't know what the pad is, the development of the riverfront, what used to be Eckwood Park, because it was in a federally designated floodplain, they had to elevate that to put the businesses on top of the pad, as it is called. Was that something Village? What was
Riverfront
it? Riverfront Village. And the caller wants to know, what plans are there to attract business to the empty buildings on the pad by the river? Who wants to handle that? Patrick?
Well, I think what you're seeing with directly across the street with the construction of the Peoria Riverfront Museum and the construction of the Caterpillar Visitor Center. Tuesday night's city council meeting, we had a redevelopment agreement in place with CSE Software, a company out of Morton, that has signed an agreement to take 2 floors of the Maxim building. They're a software developer. They have designed the simulators that are going to be inside the Caterpillar Visitor Center. And so I think what we're starting to see, and this is really the first spin-off of that museum block, that we're starting to see that there's some development. So I think as that block comes to its conclusion and it gets built out, hopefully we'll see more and more spin-off development occurring downtown.
Nothing specific for the pad at this point.
There's nothing specific for the pad at this point that has been coming through the city. Now the developer and that operates that pad may have, or operates Riverfront Village, may have some other ideas in mind. But just recently there was the old Chicago restaurant that was there that closed over the wintertime, and now Retro American Tap has opened up down there. So there has been some, well, businesses have closed, other businesses have opened. So.
We continue with a phone call. Who would own the hotel property once the loan is paid off? The city, the hotel, the developer? And before you answer that, Mayor, a reminder that it's about a $100 million project, and it's not clear exactly what the bond amount will be, but somewhere in the mid 30 million range. Mm-hmm. So the city will have a lot of money in this. So who's going to own it?
Well, the developer has the purchase option on that entire block. So he will have ownership of the entire site.
So he buys it from the Kansas or
he has purchase option for the hotel from the group that owns it, who's based out of Kansas City, I believe, and the rest of the block is owned by private owners. The rest of the other side of the alley, and he has options with those guys. So the developer actually will own the entire block where the hotel will be.
A call comes in from John, who wants to know the future of the Madison Theater. It's privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
Madison Theater is privately owned. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It's an important part of the old vaudeville history of Peoria, obviously, and we'll have to see what the private owners would like to do. But I think that, speaking for the city staff, we'd love to see it redeveloped and active and operating. I would imagine the council would feel the same way.
Sitting empty right now?
It has been, yes.
Jim Bateman and some others who belong to, and I don't remember the name of the organization, but they're preservationists. They actually have been trying to do something with the Madison Theater one time. I haven't heard anything new in that regard.
I haven't either.
Okay. Once again, we're with Mayor Jim Ardis and City Manager Patrick Urick, the City of Peoria. We are accepting tweets, text messages, phone calls, emails, electronic communication at its best. And I'm not surprised at all that the next topic is crime. Is crime on the rise in the city, or is it just a perception? Mayor, murders get headlines, and the last 2 years haven't been very good in terms of those headlines. Mm-hmm. Is crime up, down?
And that is a perception issue, H. Statistically, when you look at the statistics, crime is down, especially violent crimes. And when you take the homicide category out of that, we've really made very good progress over the last several years. And that's not a trend that's really that much different in Peoria than it is over other areas similar to our size. Last year was, and it's a difficult subject for us to discuss too, because you have, one homicide is more than any community wants, and when you have a number of them that are caused for a number of reasons, it's very disturbing. The most recent, well, it wasn't the most recent, but just several weeks ago, when the young man was the victim,
the
Billups child, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you really sit and those are the kind of things that keep us awake at night. They Absolutely. Do. The manager and I and the chief and his folks. So last year was kind of skewed. I mean, we had two arsons last year that added, I believe, 5 or 6 people to our homicide because of 2 separate arsons. But to answer your question, we are, the Chief Settings Guard has a very good strategy. Our crime numbers have gone down, but the perception, a lot of it's because of the attention some of these crimes get, is that they're higher and that the city's more dangerous.
Is part of the reason that the perception is out there is that the response from the city is rather noticeable. The Chief Steve Settings Guard has put in a task force that gets headlines. the armadillos, which now have names that escape me, but the armadillos are
Starsky and
replaced.
Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch, thank you.
Yes.
I should have known that. So I think the response helps to perpetuate the perception.
I think there's a number of reasons. I think yours are valid. I think in many cases, unfortunately, with with local media taking the reductions in staff that they have, there's just a higher likelihood, especially in the print media, for more sensationalism when it comes to these type of things. It's unfortunate, but I think that's the way the media world is these days. It's not a blame, but I just think it's the way that some of these things are inflamed that really gets people more nervous and more uptight about what the crime situation is.
Another viewer wants to know about Main Street in Peoria. There was a reduction from a 4-lane, 2 lanes in each direction, to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane from the bottom of the Main Street hill now
Yes.
up to University Street. The question is, has that been successful?
Well, I think that we're starting to see that something like that, where you changed the traffic flow, where you had 4 lanes of traffic, the intent is to try and slow it down, try to allow parking on the street, to encourage then that you start to see businesses and more pedestrian-oriented development in that area. With Bradley University at the top of the hill, and with the effort to try and facilitate business development along that Main Street corridor, we needed to have parking. If you would listen to at the corner of Sheridan and Main Street where Running Central was, they've moved out. One of the issues has always been parking that they raise, but you also have the costume trunk there, and they've said that they're very interested to see what comes next, and hopefully we'll see something very soon coming into that location. But there's a lot of opportunities. We've seen Main Street Commons has been built right near Bradley's campus, so there is an opportunity for some additional pedestrian development and for additional commercial development along Main Street.
The viewer next in the lineup is a question about volunteer firefighters. Has the city considered, because of the limitation in the budget, not being able to hire a full complement of firefighters, has the city considered volunteer firefighters, or is that even possible?
We haven't. We won't. Really the complexity of what our today's modern firefighter has to be trained in what they do. The professional standard of a professional firefighter is, with all due respect to volunteers, it's much more stringent. I mean, anywhere in the city of Peoria that we need fire response, we will have fire response anywhere in the city in 4 minutes or less. And that doesn't come by weekend training or doing something every so often. In addition to fire suppression, our professional firefighters, and there really is a significant difference when you say professional. That's a career. That's what they do for a full-time job. Their training is not only in fire suppression, but it's in a basic life support. In many cases, intermediate or advanced life support. Many are paramedics. Some are trained in confined space rescue, high-angle rescue, deep water rescue. I don't think that the city of Peoria or our citizens want to be in a position where they have to rely on folks that aren't trained to the level that our firefighters are.
The questions are starting to line up. Let's see how many we can get to. The next one is, has there been any action about a new 4-year public university in the city or near the city of Peoria? Or was that just a trial balloon to see what might happen?
Well, I think you have to look at the Peoria area and look at the context and when in that discussion and what was surrounding that. During the council's strategic planning sessions, one of the issues came up that was discussed as a challenge for Peoria is the fact that we have, within our metro area, we don't have a public 4-year university within the metropolitan statistical area, the counties that surround the city of Peoria. And so we have a very large population, in fact one of the largest populations in the state today, that doesn't have access to or is home to a public 4-year university. but there are other options, I think, that we were looking at to try and see if we couldn't explore how we might be able to at least begin that dialogue of looking at what other options might be out there. I had the
But this is long term.
long term. This is not going to happen in 2012. This is a very long, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean a campus the size of Illinois State University or Western Illinois University here in Peoria. When I was in Lake County, Illinois, we worked to create what's called the University Center of Lake County, which is a distance learning facility that has 19 public and private universities that's housed on the campus of their community college that allows for people to enroll in 19 different universities and stay in place.
H, just really quick on that one. I mean, that
Sure.
was in terms of the way that was reported when it came out of the strategic planning, it was a goal of the council, and it was reported almost like the council wanted to have a 4-year college opened up next year. And I mean, that's ridiculous. And I mean, it is a goal. We would like to see that happen at some point in time, but that process, if you're lucky, is a 5 to 10 year process, and we acknowledge that.
Next is a text message. Has there been any headway on bringing a Wrigleyville-type environment to the O'Brien Field area?
Well, in my opinion, it took a little bit longer than we expected it to, but there is. It's beginning. We've had one Wrigley-type bar that is going to be coming in down there at some point here pretty soon. There was just a nice public discussion last week about some possible plans for what that area could look like. And as we are getting the funding finally put in place for Washington Street and other areas of the warehouse district, I think similar to what the manager had to say about Riverfront Village and an increasing activity around there because of the Riverfront Museum and Cat Visitor Center, we're only a few blocks away to the baseball stadium, and I think you're going to see additional growth there as well.
The viewer points out that there were struggles with that brown bag property there at the corner, getting a liquor license, and the viewer wants to know if that struggle and might cause a developer to say the city is difficult to work with, and that might impede progress in that area.
No, actually, the place, the bar that is going to go in, that's where it's going to go in. The struggle was a concern about the existing special use, adult special use there, and if that could be there at the same time as the bar. Nobody wanted that to happen. As soon as legal and the police department clarified that they can't occupy that same space, it went away.
Next, this is a phone call that the question is, what is being done to attract families and other young professionals to Peoria? A caller named Jeff wants to know that.
Well, during the council's planning sessions and during the development of the comprehensive plan, several of the critical success factors of our comprehensive plan and several of the items of our goals of the council and within the vision statement that the council has developed talk about reinvesting in our neighborhoods and really focusing on the livability of our neighborhoods and trying to improve them from a public infrastructure standpoint, from a lighting standpoint, from a street lighting standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, but going hand in hand and walking hand in hand with that livability aspect of our neighborhoods is making sure that we have a strong education system. And that's something as well that the council talked about during their planning sessions, talked about how we can work to help facilitate a culture of educational attainment within our community. That doesn't mean we're responsible necessarily for it, but it means that we're trying to foster that environment of having good, solid schools throughout the community.
The next message is a text message asking about the STD rate, sexually transmitted diseases. The STD rate among teens in Peoria seems to be out of control. Does the city have any plans to address the issue? What role does the city play? I know that the name of the health department is the City County Health Department, but I believe that's still a county
It is.
function.
I think that when you look at that issue, and it is a significant public health issue that we should be addressing in our community. There are many partners that we have that have direct responsibility for that. Our friends at the City County Health Department are really tasked with trying to address that issue. It's an educational issue, though, as well. It's an education issue about sexual intercourse and what that means, and how to protect yourself. And that's something that needs to occur so that people are aware of the issues of sexually transmitted diseases.
Mayor Gary calls in. He lives in a subdivision north of Glen Avenue, and there are speeders in that subdivision, and it's a residential limit, of course. Why can't that be enforced a little bit better?
It can be. A lot of times, all it takes is a phone call, either to a district or at-large council member, myself, the chief, and we're glad to set up radar in those areas. There's other enforcement actions that the police department can take. Typically, when we do that, it takes care of the problem fairly quickly. And in addition, many times somebody that lives in that neighborhood is the one that gets the ticket. But you know, when we set up radar or other traffic control devices or anything in those neighborhoods, many times we say, you know, the radar doesn't say if you live here you can speed, and if you don't you can't. And usually, that's what happens. But our police department is very responsive to that, and I would ask Gary he can give me a call if he wants to. He can call the district council person. He can call the police department, and we'll be glad to respond. Call Peoria Cares.
Peoria Cares.
Yeah, 494-2773.
Correct.
And I don't know if that's Bill Spears or if that's
It's hard to say. North of Glen is a long.
And with that, we're going to have to say goodbye to our television viewers, but we're going to continue the conversation with the mayor and the city manager at www.wtvp.org. Stay with us. We'll continue on the internet momentarily. We're glad that you can continue the conversation with us with the mayor, Jim Ardis, and the city manager, Patrick Urich. And we will continue with a phone call from Tom. Why has the city not done more in blighted areas with abandoned buildings and crumbling sidewalks?
One of the things that I have really tried to dig into over the last 5 months since I've been with the city is to look at the issues that we have with blight. What are some of the factors that are causing it? Some of the issues are clearly the downturn in the economy has impacted the number of foreclosures. We have finally started to see the uptick in foreclosures that have occurred throughout the rest of the country. We're starting to see it here in Peoria for the first time. So we're seeing more and more properties that are abandoned, more and more properties that then become vacant, more and more properties that then become havens for crime and all sorts of other issues within the neighborhoods. But there are strategies that other communities have implemented that we need to look at, and we've begun to do some digging into what some of those strategies might be. Flint, Michigan, and Genesee County have been very successful in developing a land banking program, working with developing neighborhood redevelopment corporations to acquire the properties earlier so that they could either renovate them or work to take them down. We're looking at, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to demolish properties that are coming into vacant, or they're vacant or they're structurally damaged. The other piece that we have to look at with that as well is an early warning system. And currently right now, Illinois law precludes municipalities from getting information from utility companies about disconnects, about when the power is shut off, when the water is shut off, or when the sewers are shut off. So we need to work to get that information, and so that's one of the things that I think that as the council prepares a legislative program, we'll be recommending that they would look at is that we have that's really kind of the canary in the coal mine. If we could know when we're seeing properties where the utilities have been shut off for an extended period of time, then we'll know that we've got a problem. So,
a tweet has come in. How is East Peoria expanding so aggressively while Peoria is stagnant? It's disappointing that tax revenue can't cross the river. That's a question that we hear often, and frankly,
I think it should be said at the very beginning that when East Peoria redevelops and has growth and brings more people, especially to the area around the riverfront that's right across the river, that's good for us. The bridges go both ways, and people come back and forth. So that's not a bad thing that East Peoria has developed that riverfront. I think one of the things that people sometimes don't think about when they talk about difficulty in Peoria or ease in East Peoria is when you're developing or redeveloping a brownfield or a greenfield, it's basically you go in, you put your footings in, and you build and go. And the whole area of the East Peoria riverfront in particularly was basically that, brownfield for the most part, some greenfield. In Peoria, when we're doing most of that, almost anywhere you go in the core part of the city, it's a redevelopment. So you have land acquisition costs, many times you have demolition costs, you'll have environmental concerns because they're old buildings and who knows what went in behind them. And then if the building isn't demolished, you have to look at the real expensive cost of bringing that building up to code. So you need to keep that in context when you say, look at how quickly all that happened. There was nothing there beforehand. It just build it and go. And frankly, I think that it's the city is looking at some new things. I mean, we're not looking at a lot of an additional Kohl's or an additional Walmart or an additional Lowe's. Those were corporate decisions made at a corporate level to say we're going to put a store right across the river from an existing store in Peoria, and they know that it may cut into part of that market, but that's what they decided to do to try to get a larger market share. But I do think, you look at what we are doing, and to say that Peoria is stagnant, we have in process or recently finished in Peoria over $2 billion with a B dollars in capital projects. You have the Milestone Project, almost $250 million. You have a new cancer facility going up in the University of Illinois College of Medicine. You got tremendous several $100 million in new capital projects at Bradley University. Now we have the Riverfront Museum, we have the Caterpillar Visitor Center, and you're going to see an explosion in the warehouse district. So to say Peoria is stagnant on the commercial side, it's not happening. And the residential growth that you've seen in Peoria over the last decade is there too. So again, a lot of this is perception, just like crime was perception.
Well, when you look across the river and you see Bass Pro Shops, I can understand perception.
Right? Oh, I can too.
A call from Paul. What are city plans in Washington What are the city plans in the Washington Darst Street area? Are they to build it up or allow it to decay more?
Well, within the Darst Street area, I think that what many people will look at that and say, boy, this looks like it's a just an industrial eyesore in that area. But what you really have in that area right now is really a recycling renaissance going on. And you have, with the businesses that are there, Bear Recycling has come in, and the investment that they've made, they just recently put in a $30 million investment of property. It's a crusher that they've put in for taking automobiles and crushing it. You have the new asphalt recycler that's come in that we just had the groundbreaking for that is coming in, and within that area, you see that one of the things that you need to have to be a sustainable community is you need to have industry. You need to have the ability to, and industry makes waste, they do, and you have to have the ability to move through that waste stream and to be able to recycle. And I think there are over half a dozen businesses within that area right now that are performing certain aspects of recycling. A. Miller is there as well, has had a presence there for many years. So there is a significant amount of investment that's going on there.
Is that in a TIF district?
You have the Southern Gateway TIF district is there, and there is a small amount of TIF increment that gets generated. We know that long term, just from the sheer volume of truck traffic that's down on that stretch of Darst Street that we have, and Clark Street, that we have all the businesses there are asking us to help us because of the truck traffic to fix the roads. So that's a sign that we've got some business activity.
Funny you should mention that, because Roger has called in, and Roger wants to know what the city plans are for resurfacing older streets. Mm-hmm. And we know that the pea gravel program was cut back as part of the budgetary restraints. What about older streets?
Well, we certainly are aware of issues that we have with our improvement plan, our capital budget, and the need to make sure that we're maintaining our infrastructure. And really this year, I think the council is going to have a really good discussion on that. The manager has some thoughts about how we may be able to dedicate specific funds that will be there for our infrastructure. And that's what we need to do. These last couple of years have been extremely difficult in the budget, and when you get to a point where you're saying potentially losing our emergency first responders, or maybe holding off another year on a seal coating program, or raise taxes, I think most people did and do prefer that we take the option that you did. You can't do that forever, or your roads will look like they do in a good majority of our state roads.
So is your budgetary process far enough along for the upcoming year to help Roger with a definition? Are you going to expand the seal coat?
I believe that what we're going to do is make some recommendations on how we can, within our capital budgeting process, fund some additional infrastructure improvements. We know that from our arterial roads to our residential side streets that we have issues throughout the city that we need to address. The backlog and the amount of money that we have to address all of those are sizable, but you have to look at the fact that the city is coming out of, we're still really, I mean, you could call it a recovery, but it's really not a recovery. We're still in this doldrum of a very weak recovery from this major recession. Our operating budget deficit, fortunately, thanks to some improvements in healthcare, it was $8 million. We made some healthcare changes that the council approved unanimously Tuesday night. We're down to a $5.5 million operating budget deficit, but we're really looking at how we can balance the capital budget as well and be able to try and invest in our infrastructure.
And that $5 million sounds pretty good compared to the $14 million a year ago, I believe it was.
Well, yeah, it does, H. But I think what you have to keep in mind is that over these years, and it's not just the last couple, it's over the last five very difficult years, the low-hanging fruit was gone 4 years ago. And every year since then, we keep squeezing down harder and harder and harder. So while luckily, before we even get into the hard discussions, the manager has got us in a position to have minimized that budget to $5.5 million. It's not going to be an easy five to find.
To put that into perspective, in 2002, the city had 864 employees. This year we have 709. And we're talking about trying to reduce the operating budget another $5.5 million, which really is, if you looking at salaries and benefits and healthcare and everything, that's probably another 40 or 50 positions within the budget. So as we look at, and the challenge that we have is that all of our revenue streams are not growing as fast as the costs of our major costs driver, which is wages and healthcare and pensions for our employees. Running a city government is very labor intensive. Police officers, firefighters, public works employees, planners, inspectors. It's a very labor intensive job. But we're going to have to be more productive. We're going to have to be leaner. We're going to have to partner with other governments and partner with the private sector to try and do some things differently than we have in the past.
A call from Matthew. Matthew wants to know, with the population leaving downtown Peoria, can the arts attract people back?
I think that what you're going to see, in my opinion, in the next 4 or 5 years is you're going to see a return to downtown Peoria. Part of that's going to be because of the museum and the Caterpillar Visitor Center. Part of it's going to be because of the investment that we're seeing now in the warehouse district and the different businesses that are going to be opening in the area, but also because of the proximity to the Civic Center and what the arts already are doing there between the symphony and the Civic Chorale, the Broadway series and so on. And people don't just come from the outer areas of Peoria downtown for the most part to enjoy the arts. They come from all over central Illinois. So I guess I would kind of question that only the people that lived downtown were people that enjoyed the outstanding arts presentations that we have in Peoria.
Does the fact that Rocco Landesman, head of the National Endowment for the Arts, he's visited Peoria twice in 18 months. What's that signal to you with regard to arts?
I think probably the first thing it signals to me is Rocco Landesman will never make a smart aleck comment about Peoria because we called him to task for it and he came here. But you know, he did, but I'll give him credit. He did do that. He kind of got spanked a little bit, and he still came and took his medicine. And once he was here, he was. I think I would be comfortable saying he was not just impressed, he was astounded with the wide variety of different venues that we had relating to the arts. And I think that he has gone, and I don't think he has, he's gone out nationally and told people about how strong the arts are in Peoria, Illinois, how much we value with them, and in turn, what type of money that brings into our community because we do. So that turned out real good for us.
You bring the artists. You bring the artists. The artists come in. You're starting to see it right now in downtown. The First Friday events that are going on here throughout downtown Peoria and throughout the Warehouse District, you're starting to see that there is this area. And if you look at communities where they've had a resurgence in warehouse districts or in their older parts of the community, the downtown areas, you see that the artists come first. Then you see the interest that attracts, and that brings other people that want to be there. And then there's bars that will open up, and you begin to see that process of reinvesting back in an older part of your community.
And the Fine Arts Fair is coming in 8 or 9 days?
Yes, correct.
Okay. The next, by the way, if you want to text in or if you'd like to tweet in, please do so. You have a direct line to the mayor and to the city manager of Peoria. The next message is asking about what is happening with the storm runoff system and a little bit of background. For about 30 years, Peoria, under the gun of the EPA, has been looking at what is called CSO, Combined Sewer Overflow. Essentially what that means is that all the stormwater runoff and effluent has to be retained in some sort of holding unit before it can be put into the river, and therefore it has to go to the treatment plant. The problem is right now there are about 3 options. They cost anywhere from $125 million to $260 million. What's the budget of the city? 150?
About $170 million was our
170?
operating budget.
So
operating capital.
we could easily double the budget in 1 year if we were to do that all in one fell swoop. What is the status of that, and how mad is the US EPA?
Well, the director, David Barber, our Public Works Director, was just recently in a meeting with the US EPA where we were talking about just this issue. And they're continuing to have a dialogue about what's the most cost-effective and reasonable approach to take to address this issue. The older communities like Peoria, when they were designed many, many years ago, developed the combined storm and sanitary sewers. And so you had both the sanitary, when you flush your toilet, it runs in, and then when you have the stormwater runoff. And when you get those large storm events, you'll get the overflow of the effluent into the river. And we've been looking at ways to cost effectively address this issue because we have to comply with the Clean Water Act and making sure that we're moving that forward. So we're looking and still continuing to discuss with the US EPA the approaches that we can take and how we can work to address this matter. But it is an expensive item.
The answer to the question is they're not mad. And
Right.
They continue to work with communities our size to determine the best way to handle the issue.
Timetable?
Yeah, you know what? It's hard to
It's
say.
been
I don't
30
think anybody
years,
thought
so-
it was. Yeah, we didn't. I don't think anybody thought 30 years ago
Right.
it wouldn't be finished yet. But
Right.
you know, I think, and this is just a total guess, but I would think that probably within the next year, we will be at a point where we actually agree. We probably won't agree with what they think we need to spend to do it, but I think that we'll agree with how we need to get it done.
Some people have noticed the smell of some sewer gas. Does that have anything to do with this, or are you even aware of that?
I'm not aware
Okay.
of that.
We can't answer that question. We do have time for a couple of more questions if you'd like to tweet or text in here at WTVP. Are there any plans to attract a new indoor football team? Are you in charge of football teams?
Well, it's the Civic Center. The Civic Center does the programming for the arena and for all the other operations. I think if they could find a team that would fill the arena up in the off season, I think they'd look at it. I know, Bloomington has one. I don't know what their numbers have been over there, but if there was someone interested in going in, I think the Civic Center would like to talk to them. I can't say if there's a plan right now for that.
You're not aware of any?
I'm not aware.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit specifically about economic development.
Sure.
Craig Hullinger was the economic development director at the city of
Yes.
Peoria. Retired actually in November of '09, I believe. And since then, you have not filled that position. There was discussion of the city cooperating with the Economic Development Council, the county in some capacity. The county just hired a new economic development director. He lasted 4 months and decided to move on to other pastures. Where do we stand with economic development? You need to have a champion. You can't just have some people who are in the office. You need to have a champion. Where are we?
Well, I would say that every city employee should be an economic development champion. I think that every resident of the city of Peoria should be an economic development
See,
champion.
now the pressure's on. I
But-
got to go find a company.
But I do think we live here for a reason. We make it our home, whether we were born and raised here or we've moved here, and we find it that this is a place that we want to be. So there's something about the quality of life in Peoria that is attractive to all of us. We need to ensure that it's attractive to others and explain that and talk about why we live here. But from a specifically looking at our issues, one of the tasks that I have at hand is with this budget is to make some recommendations on how the city will be restructured because of the fiscal realities that we're facing. We currently have a number of departments that touch the development process, from the manager's office to the economic development department to the planning and growth management department to the inspections department. So we need to look at how we can restructure the organization to more effectively deliver those services. Economic development is an important role. Through the council's planning process, they talked about the importance of economic development. The hotel is an economic development project that we're talking about. So it's critical to what we're trying to accomplish. So what we'll see in the upcoming weeks will be some recommendations on how we can work with our partners, both public and private, and how we can realign our services to more effectively deliver them.
Along those same lines, Mayor, you last, after the State of the City address, announced that you wanted Sheriff McCoy and Chief Settings Guard to look into the possibility of shared services. Where does that stand?
When I did bring that up, and I do think it's important for a number of reasons. Number one is many times over the years when we've talked about consolidating services, people would be under the impression that police and fire in particular were sacred cows, and that they probably, how come they weren't looked at with the same scrutiny? And when you look at the size of the City of Peoria Police Department budget and the County of Peoria operating budget, they're huge, and there's potentially some duplications there. So I thought it only made sense to make sure that people understood that there are no sacred cows. It's important for our fiscal solvency and how we do business. The chief and the sheriff have been doing background work, talking to other communities, other areas that have a metro-type police force, trying to get some of that data together. So when we start talking about this, they're not out reinventing the wheel. They're looking at how other successful communities did that. And really one of the reasons that when I did bring that up, I tried to put a 5-year time frame on that because I didn't want to set them up to fail. That's not going to be, those operations aren't going to be something that we're just going to get together, the city manager and the county administrator, and say, okay, we're going to work this out and combine our departments next year. It's not going to happen.
We have a text message that has come in. What is the issue with replacing the equipment in the city parking decks? That's been discussed a couple of times, most recently Tuesday. Can you explain this, because it involves the checkout equipment and it involves whether or not to put electric plug-in stations? And
Correct. We were looking at, as part of the capital budget, replacing some of the equipment so that you can get in and out of the parking decks that the city owns and that National Garages operates for us. I think the question that the council had over this centered around what's the most effective and technologically advanced way to address this issue. Looking at it from the perspective of the staff was looking at it saying that what we could do is use the AVI system, which is very similar to if you're up in the Chicago suburbs driving through the tollway system, the iPass system that they have. So you'd be able to pull right in, it would register that you have that, and you'd be able to go on and in. But there are other advances in parking technology that might come to the table that we might be able to look at, such as making the systems fully automated. And I think it was just a reflection that the council wanted us to look at how we could use technology and advances in technology to address things moving forward.
But they were tossing around a number that was north of $1 million.
Technology is expensive. In order to implement it, you have to be willing to invest that type of dollar. Now, if it can help in terms of reducing the reliance on the human element of having somebody sitting in a booth, taking tickets, taking cash, that's one aspect of it. If it eases the egress and ingress into the parking deck, that's another way of looking at it as well. So I think the council just, in the response back on Tuesday night, said, let's make sure that we're getting a fully informed, fully vetted decision and recommendation.
We have another text message. What is the status of the Coliseum property on Adams? And that has been a nightclub. There was a shooting there at one point in time several years ago. Do you know what the property is that the text message is referring to?
I don't.
It's it has an old.
Is that across the street from the old Zoll's?
No, not that. I think they're referring. This is about the 800 block of Southwest Adams.
So this is south of O'Brien Field.
South of O'Brien Field by about a half a block or maybe a block.
At this point in time, with the developments that are going to occur with the warehouse district and the Tiger II funding, there are going to be those side streets that are going to get renovated within that area. As that progresses, there might be an opportunity to see some additional further development, but I'm not aware of any development in that specific block on Adams at this point in time.
A final thought from you, Mayor. We're looking at redistricting in the city and whether or not cumulative voting will continue. In brief, can you give us an update on where we are with cumulative voting redistricting?
Well, we had a committee comprised of the district council members, and Councilman Spears actually chaired that committee. Every 10 years after the census, we need to look at how the districts are shaped and what the sizes are. All districts are supposed to be relatively equal in the number of people that live within each district. As most of us know, a large part of our population has shifted north, so the district boundary lines have changed. The quick answer is we're looking at where those lines would need to be if we kept the same system, but concurrently we're having a discussion on maybe the way the council makeup is put together, being 5 district, 5 at large, maybe that can change. There's a voters lawsuit that has to be discussed. It's relatively complicated, but we think this is really a good time because we did just finish the census. We are looking at redrawing the district lines. If there's a willingness and a desire on the part of our constituents to look at maybe juggling that, maybe having 8, maybe have 8 districts and 2 at large, or some different component, we would decide that before we redrew the districts.
Do you personally have a preference as to whether it be 10 districts, 8 and 2, as you mentioned, or remain 5-5, or whether cumulative voting should remain?
Yeah, I don't think that there's, in my mind, and I think statistically that the professors from Bradley and others that have analyzed cumulative voting in Peoria would say it has not been successful in having more minorities have an opportunity to serve on the council. If you went back to 10 districts, I think I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that you would have more opportunities for minorities to serve because you're having smaller districts and there's higher concentrations of minorities in certain areas of the city. I'm not saying I advocate for that. What I'm advocating for is to have the discussion. We have the new census numbers. If we have an opportunity now to provide a better system of representation, this is the time to have that discussion.
And it's, so I need to mention that in 2 weeks here on At Issue, we'll be talking about redistricting and cumulative voting with the president of the state NAACP, Don Jackson, and with one of the original plaintiffs in the lawsuit back in the 1980s that resulted in cumulative voting, Joyce Banks. Both Don Jackson and Joyce Banks here in 2 weeks on At Issue. Mayor Jim Ardis, as always, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks,
I know
H.
you have a very busy schedule, especially right now you do, and I appreciate you spending time with our viewers on WTVP. Patrick Urick, congratulations on the first test of fire after just 5 months in the seat as city manager.
Thank you.
And we no doubt will have both of you back on At Issue in the future.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll be back in another week with a discussion about Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. There is a process right now underway whereby he will move to a possible sainthood status. There are 3 steps. He needs to be named venerable, and then he'll be canonized, and then beatified and then canonized as a saint. If that were to happen, it would mean significant changes in tourism in Peoria. We're going to talk about that with Bishop Daniel Jenke and Monsignor Deptula of the Peoria Catholic Diocese. Next week on At Issue, followed 2 weeks from now with a discussion of cumulative voting. Please join us in the next 2 weeks.